60 million people travel for New Year, fearing peak of epidemic, dense youth disease deaths. Escaping urban competition, Dali in Yunnan becomes a lying flat shelter. Tenfold surge in cross-border movement, China experiences a sudden wave of fleeing. The CCP's unconventional promotion of Dong Jun as defense minister, what does it signify? It's all covered in today's China Truths. 60 million people travel for New Year, fearing peak of epidemic, dense youth disease deaths. As the New Year travel peak approaches, China is bracing for a potential major epidemic outbreak. According to China Railways, over 63 million passengers are expected to travel during the New Year period. Experts argue that over the 3 to 4 years of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Chinese Communist Party has consistently downplayed reality, overlooking public safety. The New Year holiday might witness an explosive phase of the epidemic. Meanwhile, amid the severe epidemic that began with winter, abrupt deaths, especially among young adults, have recently become disturbingly frequent. Mr. Yu from Yunnan stated that a man, who was in his 30s, died abruptly without any forewarning, catching his family off guard. He collapsed suddenly and never got up again. He was gone just like that. Mr. 1, a medical professional from Jiangsu, noted that these on-the-spot deaths, often caused by cerebral hemorrhage, thrombosis, or myocarditis, are becoming alarmingly common. He mentioned a 32-year-old Tsinghua University alum from Beijing, who was also his friend's neighbor, dying in this manner. The Epoch Times reported that since this December, at least 21 young and middle-aged Chinese officials, professors, corporate leaders, and well-known figures have succumbed to sudden illnesses, all below 60 years old, including 6 under 40. Escaping urban competition, Dali in Yunnan becomes a lying flat shelter. According to British media outlet FX168 Financial News, Dali in Yunnan has recently emerged as a sanctuary for tens of thousands of young people adopting the lying flat lifestyle. Furthermore, renowned for its ancient bi-ethnic courtyard houses and the vistas of the eastern Himalayas, Dali is also increasingly drawing a distinct group of social and intellectual refugees seeking to escape stress in China's major urban areas. Notably, this trend has gained momentum this year, as the epidemic shows signs of easing, economic recovery proves challenging, and the political climate grows more stringent. Mr. Gao, an entrepreneur from Shenzhen, mentioned he began visiting Dali this year. He appreciates conducting business meetings in local coffee shops, where a cup of coffee costs just 6 yuan, about 91 cents, significantly cheaper than in larger cities. Dali has long attracted dreamers and dropouts, and Mr. Gao estimates that of its 3.6 million residents, about 100,000 are now such alternative individuals. This group includes those embracing the lying flat philosophy, predominantly young people who eschew societal expectations like enduring long work hours, investing in expensive real estate, and pursuing marriage and parenthood. Dali's affordability is a major lure. Xiao Bao, a freelance market analyst from Shanghai, rents a wooden house for roughly 1,800 yuan, about $270 a month, finding it a place for a more sustainable lifestyle. However, Dali's serene charm is swiftly changing due to the surge of tourists. This influx is bumping up living expenses, with a local street vendor in Dali ancient town mentioning that there are times she can't even afford fruit. According to Mr. Gao, life in the big cities can breed a lot of discontent and gripes, particularly for the youth. He adds that the government shouldn't worry, Dali isn't likely to go mainstream. It'll continue to thrive in its own niche, serving as a diverse sanctuary. Tenfold surge in cross-border movement, China experiences a sudden wave of fleeing. In 2023, numerous significant events occurred worldwide. However, in China, an extraordinary and increasingly intense situation emerged unexpectedly during the year, involving a new route through South America leading to the United States. U.S. data shows that in 2023, about 24,000 Chinese entered the U.S. illegally via the Mexican border, a significant jump from the 17,000 over the previous decade. Why this sudden spike in 2023? Who are these Chinese people, and what major issues are they facing under the CCP's rule? Tenfold surge in this year's border crossings, signaling another wave of exodus from China. Ms. Guo Jun, editor-in-chief of the Epoch Times Chinese version, discussed on Elite Forum the sharp increase in illegal immigration into the U.S. since around 2022, primarily through California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. In 2022, 2.2 million illegal immigrants entered the U.S., and by October 2023, this figure reached 2.04 million, likely surpassing the previous year's total. This rise, totaling over 4 million in 2 years, represents more than 1% of the U.S. population. Particularly notable is the increase in illegal Chinese immigrants. In 2023, 24,000 Chinese nationals entered illegally, exceeding the total of the past decade. While most illegal entrants from the southwest border are from South American countries, with Mexicans being the majority, the Chinese migrants typically aren't the poorest in China, often spending more on travel expenses. They are mainly young and middle-aged men, though women, the elderly, and children also make the journey, with young and middle-aged men accounting for 70 to 80%. Chen Chuang, executive chairman of the Chinese Democratic Party's full committee, stated on the same forum that the recent exodus from China is largely pandemic-driven. China's delayed response to the pandemic, including lockdowns, resulted in significant human and material costs. Even post-lockdown, the country faced sudden deaths of millions. Most who fled China in the past year experienced harsh lockdowns, impacting their businesses and livelihoods. Especially in 2022, Xi Jinping's lockdown policies for his re-election alienated many. The notion that unblocking would immediately lead to economic recovery was overly optimistic. The debts incurred during this period must be repaid. Chen Chuang explained that many who crossed the border had thoroughly prepared before coming to the U.S. They knew what life was like in China and could no longer bear it. They had made plans for what they could do in the U.S. For instance, one man, although not a border crosser but a visa entrant, along with his wife, a deputy dean at a law school in northeast China, sold their house and moved to the U.S. as a family of 3. He learned woodworking before leaving China, as he had no legal qualifications in the U.S. They applied for asylum upon arrival and have settled well in the U.S. However, some immigrants face disillusionment, expecting easy financial success in the U.S. Young immigrants especially struggled initially without work permits, leading some to return to China. But most are mentally prepared for the challenges, whether in work, life, or the immigration process. Most have settled down after a few months of adjustment and don't want to return to China in the short term, hoping to establish roots in the U.S. Chen Chuang said that most people seeking legal assistance he's met are of this type. Oppressive government is fiercer than a tiger. The Great Escape ignites dramatic changes in Eastern Europe. Independent television producer Li Jun, speaking on Elite Forum, highlighted multiple exodus waves in Chinese history. Earlier ones were largely economically driven, like the significant migration from Guangdong to Hong Kong. This was due to the huge economic disparity between Guangdong and Hong Kong, where food and a better life were offered. However, the current exodus, the sudden wave that emerged in 2023, is rooted in despair over China's economic and political climate, not in basic needs like food. 3 years of lockdowns have been eye-opening, leading many with economic means, including small business owners and entrepreneurs, to flee. These people often circumvent China's internet restrictions to access free information, gaining foresight about the world. Post-2023, as restrictions were lifted, their numbers fleeing surged. Li anticipates more departures if China's status quo persists into 2024. The declining economy, especially in real estate, and an increasingly left-leaning political environment, reminiscent of the Cultural Revolution, are pushing people away. He foresees government financial troubles, particularly from the real estate downturn, leading to fiscal pressures on entrepreneurs and the public. Thus, the oppressive regime may intensify public harm, aligning with the saying, "Oppressive government is fiercer than a tiger." Li also notes a theory linking Eastern Europe's disintegration to mass exodus, with East Germany as a key example. In the 1950s, about 2.7 million fled to West Germany. The Berlin Wall, built in 1961 due to the exodus, didn't curb the migration. By the East-West Germany merger, nearly 3.8 million East Germans had fled. In May 1989, Hungary's border fence cutting provided a new escape route, leading to around 120,000 more fleeing by year's end. East Germany's eventual collapse was inevitable as the people's will to flee persisted. In essence, the Berlin Wall had already collapsed in the hearts of East Germans. Similar to the pre-collapse era of the Soviet Union, China's peak exodus wave lies ahead. Ms. Guojun said that many people say that Chinese people settle down and relocate because they don't like to take risks, but this is not entirely true. She noted that throughout history, Chinese people have ventured far, notably to the east of the Shanhaiguan Pass, western regions, and extensively to Southeast Asia, driven largely by economic factors which are closely linked to politics. For instance, the mass migration from Guangdong to Hong Kong in the 70s and 80s was primarily for economic reasons, a trend not seen before 1949, which she attributes to the economic policies of the Communist Party. Guojun believes the current wave of Chinese migration to the United States follows a similar pattern, with some fleeing political persecution or seeking freedom from the Communist Party's authoritarian regime, but most are driven by economic reasons. She emphasized that such mass migrations have historically been a sign of political governance failure, which can seriously lead to the collapse of the entire regime. The phenomenon is not limited to the US, as there's a significant movement of Chinese people to Europe, the Middle East, Japan, and Southeast Asia. This includes wealthy and middle-class individuals through regular immigration, and those labeled as lower-end population by the CCP, who escape through labor, smuggling, and other means. She views both as forms of exodus, indicative of serious issues with the CCP's governance. Guojun also drew parallels between China's current situation and the Soviet Union before its collapse, noting the significant number of people disassociating from the Communist Party, Youth League, and Young Pioneers, alongside large-scale migration and capital movement abroad. She anticipates a real, widespread exodus or crisis in China to fully emerge in the next 2 to 3 years. The CCP's unconventional promotion of Dong Jun as defense minister, what does it signify? State media Xinhua reports that China has appointed 62-year-old former Navy Chief Admiral Dong Jun as its new defense minister. This appointment concludes the long-standing speculation regarding the replacement of General Li Shangfu, the military's top diplomat, amid ongoing instability within the regime's upper echelons. Analysts believe Dong Jun's background and this appointment convey two significant messages. Signal 1, emphasizing the South China Sea and Sino-US rivalry. Wen Ti-sung, a non-resident fellow at the Atlantic Council's Global China Center, discussed the implications of this appointment on social media platform X. Sung observed, the appointment of Dong Jun as the new defense minister, along with the promotion of senior officers with naval and South China Sea experience, suggests the Chinese Communist Party is prioritizing the South China Sea as a key area in its geopolitical competition with the US. Dong's extensive experience in naval operations, especially the CCP Navy's recent activities in the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait, which have garnered criticism from the US, likely contributed to his appointment. His work in the Taiwan Strait, a potential flashpoint in Sino-American relations, is particularly noteworthy. Distinct from his predecessors, Dong Jun is not a member of the Central Military Commission. This indicates that the CCP leadership has deviated from traditional practices to elevate Dong, an unusual move within the regime's hierarchy. Sung highlighted that CCP defense ministers typically hold 3 positions: Central Military Commission member, State Counselor, and Minister of National Defense. Dong, however, only occupies one of these roles, suggesting a relatively diminished influence in his capacity as defense minister. Signal 2, the purge of the rocket force. Dong Jun's appointment as the first Navy-origin defense minister in China is significant. Sung pointed out that the CCP usually selects defense ministers from technically focused institutions like the Rocket Force and the General Equipment Department, which handles procurement. Opting for a naval figure like Dong could indicate ongoing purges or investigations within the Rocket Force and General Equipment Department, rendering promotions from these sectors politically challenging within the CCP. This notion is supported by the recent dismissal of 2 high-ranking officials from the rocket force this summer. The trend continued this Friday, with the National People's Congress Standing Committee announcing the removal of 9 senior generals, including former Air Force Commander General Ding Liehang and former Rocket Force Commanders Zhou Yanning and Liu Chao. Don't forget to leave a comment in the section below to share your opinions on today's topic with us. Make sure to like and subscribe to see more interesting topics from China Truths.